In the NFL, there are teams that just seem to put it together very easily, and other teams that seem to just year by year always be stuck in rebuild mode. And I got to be honest with you, I think there's a lot of different reasons for that. At the same time, I feel like there's a lot of NFL teams, like my Vikings, for instance, they're stuck in the middle. They're not bad enough to get like a top 5 pick, but they're also not good enough to be like playoff contenders. It's tough, But at the same time, there's teams that are in rebuild right now, but there's teams that just always seem to be, teams like the Jaguars, the Lions, and don't get me wrong, the Jaguars were literally in the playoffs as early as a couple of years ago. Was it 5 years ago? 2017, they were literally playing for to go to the Super Bowl, and then obviously, ended up losing that game to the Patriots. But at the end of the day, you're in a position where, for these last half decade or close to it, the teams like the Jaguars, the Lions, the Jets, and to a degree the Texans have always seemed to be stuck in rebuild mode. Why are teams stuck in rebuild mode? Like I said, I think it all starts, the number one, I'm about to give you the most cliche GM response that you can get from any new GM that's coming into a new organization. I think it starts with culture. Number one, you have to have a culture that wants to encourage players. Players want to go to every day. They want to go there to work every day. They want to be a part of that organization. And for the Jets, for the Lions, for the Jaguars, it just, I don't know. I feel like for those particular organizations, especially for the Jaguars this last season, I mean, we saw what happened with Urban Meyer and Trevor Lawrence and everything that kind of went down there. It didn't end well. Like, I don't think they had a solid culture. I don't think that guys wanted to show up there at the end of the day, and I think it made it tough to go out and play. And I think obviously there were a lot of distractions. I can tell you from firsthand experience, distractions do definitely play a role, and so does coaching, for that matter. If you want to go play for a guy, if you want to be a part of that organization, and give it your all for that particular coach, it definitely plays into it. So, I think it starts with culture. Do you have an organization that players want to be a part of? Do you have a coach that players want to play for? That's a big question. And I think that's kind of the first thing you have to ask yourself as to why certain NFL teams are stuck in rebuild mode. Obviously the Lions, what was it, a couple of years ago, they had, who was that? Was it Caldwell? That was actually a pretty respectable coach. I think Jim Caldwell was a very respectable coach. I believe even brought them to the playoffs, if I'm not mistaken. But, there was kind of that, it was kind of caught me off guard when they decided to fire him. I really honestly couldn't believe it. And I felt like he was really putting together a solid team. They really wanted to play for him. That defense was coming together, and then they just let him go. So it was kind of one of those things where they had a solid footing at that one point, and then things just seemed to fall apart after that. You also talk about the Jaguars, like we mentioned, all of the things that went on last year. Again, I don't think a lot of players wanted to play there. You look at teams like the Jets. We just talked about the Jaguars. The Jets, I think as of recent, they've been in rebuild mode because obviously Zach Wilson, bringing in a rookie quarterback to be able to be that guy right off the bat might not, it's tough for any rookie quarterback to get going. So it's important that you have a guy that they can learn behind and have, somewhat of a defense to be able to kind of, and pieces for that matter, to be able to help him out. Zach Wilson didn't really have that. So, we talked about culture. We talked about going into particular situations, a little bit to a degree. The Houston Texans kind of fit in that mold too. You had a franchise quarterback, traded him away. Well, this offseason you traded him away, but, obviously there's a whole kind of controversy going on there. You can't tell me though, if and prayers for everyone involved in the Deshaun Watson situation, if this wasn't going on right now, if Deshaun Watson was still on the Texans, they would be at least in the running for a playoff spot, especially in the AFC South. So, I mean, if we're being honest, that's just the harsh reality of it is. I think they would still have a better team around them. I think they would be in a better spot, but Davis Mills is the real deal. But back to the question of why are certain teams stuck in rebuild mode? We talked about culture, we talked about coaching, but I think at the end of the day, another big part of that is you got to attract players in free agency, and some of those, those guys don't want to go to the Jaguars. They don't want to go to the Jets unless there's a massive amount of money involved, and usually that's how they get those guys, and then they don't necessarily go out and pan out. So, it's one of those things where if they can get the right guys in there, it usually can make a lot of a difference. But also the most important thing that I think a lot of people are forgetting, the draft. It's so huge. You can be like teams like the Jets, the Jaguars, and all this other plethora, the Lions, that have had all these early round draft picks. But if you don't hit on them, it really does hurt your franchise. And also, it's the fact of, well, we're actually going to bring up a team that's not even really in rebuild mode. We'll bring up a couple for that matter. You have to look at the Patriots. They draft relatively well. They have, but really what helps the Patriots, what keeps them competitive, is the fact that Bill Belichick, he has a system in his mind that has continually worked for over 2 decades now, and for some reason, or for 2 decades, excuse me, and he brings in players that fits that mold, whether it's a free agent that really hasn't panned out with another team, or whether it's the draft or whatever, he gets the most out of those players. That's one way. I don't think we're going to see another thing like Bill Belichick or another team like the Patriots under his command. But then you look at a team like the Kansas City Chiefs, who in my mind have proven to everybody that you do not need to draft guys in the first round in order for them to be able to make a huge difference. Now, obviously, this last year they got a couple of first-round picks, but that is what it is. I think both of those guys could be big finds as well. But let's just take a look at some of these draft picks over the years from the Chiefs. Okay, we take a look at it. So we're not even going to really talk about 2022 right now. We'll get to that in a second. But you talk about Nick Bolton coming in and being a stud at middle linebacker. You talk about Creed Humphrey, former second-round pick, one of the highest-graded centers in all of football last year. And then you talk about Trey Smith in the 6th round, one of the highest-graded guards in all of the league last year. The year before that, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You had a good running back that's still really getting it done for the team. Willie Gay Jr. out there playing linebacker for him at a solid level. Lucas Niang, I really respect his game. L'Jarius Sneed, just top to bottom, these draft classes are very respectable. The year before that, Nicole Hardman, Juan Thornhill, who is in the mix for that safety spot. There's just guys that they continually draft well and are able to get. Then we also scroll down, Breland Speaks, all those guys, Derek Nadi, Armani Watts, all these guys, but obviously also 2017 and Patrick Mahomes was obviously a big reason for that as well. But at the end of the day, you see things with the Chiefs. They draft well. And the thing is they don't get guys just in the first round. You don't need to just draft guys in the first round. Now, are they probably the most likely guys to pan out? Yeah. Okay, I'll concede that. But at the same time, as we've seen with the Chiefs and to a degree with the Patriots, you can get guys in the 6th, 7th rounds that are starters and they fail for whatever reason, health concerns, whatever it is. You can get quality starters in the later rounds that can make a big difference. And I think that's kind of what's been kind of going on to a degree. So, but let's look at some of these other teams. We'll go ahead and we'll start with the Jets. We'll start with the Jets. So obviously this year they had a really good draft class. 3 first-round picks and all that. But look before that, Zach Wilson. Obviously, there's a lot riding on him this year. I think before that, they were kind of wondering if Sam Darnold was going to be that guy. And that's another thing, too. Obviously, you need to hit on your quarterback position, arguably the most important position. Well, it's easily the most important position, in all of football. But if you hit on it, great. You can mask a lot of problems. Look at the Texans. They're a great example of that. If you don't hit on it, your franchise could be just down in the dumps for a while. But you just take a look at this from year to year. I mean, you talk about, Sam Darnold. After that, brought in Quinnen Williams. And they had some good draft picks in here, but Denzel Mims hasn't exactly panned out yet. And again, but the most important thing to take away here is, I believe, that quarterback position, and I think that's why the Jets particularly are in that kind of position. So they've had some good draft picks throughout here, and most recently, I felt like last year was a relatively good year. Elijah Vera Tucker being a stud on that offensive line. Elijah Moore, really excited for what he's going to do. Michael Carter, he proved he could kind of be a bell cow back to a degree last year. This year, 3 first-round draft picks and Ahmad Gardner, Garrett Wilson, and Jermaine Johnson II. So, there's a lot of positive things going on with the Jets. I think Robert Saleh is doing a very fantastic job with things. But then let's also look at the Jaguars. Again, last year they drafted their franchise quarterback. You hope that Trevor Lawrence is going to be that guy if you could get him some help, which they did. This year they helped out shore up that offensive line, bringing in guys Luke Fortner in the draft. I was really excited to see him. Also Brandon Scherff in free agency. But then you look at the rest of this, over the last couple of years, it's been kind of a tough road to hoe. Josh Allen is kind of one of the lone bright spots here. Juwan Taylor at tackle as well. But Taven Ryan, just back these last couple of years, if you don't hit Leonard Fournette, not even with the team anymore, Jalen Ramsey traded. You have to look at the totality of these franchises. How they draft is so important. And then we'll even just give you a quick look at the Detroit Lions here. We'll talk about, obviously last year they got Penei Sewell in the first round, who I think is going to be a big reason as to why this offensive line is still, it's one of the best and most underrated units in the entire NFL. But, quarterback has been kind of a tough road to hoe for a while. You had Matt Stafford, but other than that, is Jared Goff going to be that guy? But at the end of the day, I think the Lions have done a lot recently to hopefully get them in a position position where, you know, the draft will be and has been good to them. So I think that's a lot of reasons you talk about why these teams are, certain teams are stuck in rebuild mode. Culture, do players want to be there? Do they want to play for that coach? Can they bring free agents in, you know, and not have to pay them an arm and a leg to get there? You know, can they draft well? That's kind of a, you know, I think that's why a lot of these teams aren't necessarily being there. And at the end of the day, again, there's teams around there that have shown ways to get around that. You don't have to draft guys in the first round. You know, even guys like the Chiefs, they've seemed to build around Andy Reid like a solid, you know, scouting department, and that has gone around. You saw Ryan Poles get hired by the Bears. Like, when you have a good organization from top to bottom, there are reasons that they get hired by other organizations because they see what happened with A, maybe B. That's what they can bring here. I never was very good at algebra, any of that stuff, but or school for that matter. But we'll say, at the end of the day, there's a correlation between having a good organization in terms of run from top to bottom, drafting well, bringing in the right guys that want to be a part of the organization, bringing in the right coaches, and developing players. And I think that I think those are just a couple reasons as to why we think that certain NFL teams are stuck in rebuild mode. But that's it. Let us know what you guys think. Make sure you guys like and subscribe down below. Leave a like and a comment. It helps people find the show. Greatly appreciate all the support that we've gotten and continue to get. You guys are all truthfully awesome. We love every single one of you. Down in the description below, you'll find all of our social media platforms, so give us a like and a follow there. Also remember to give us a listen and sub on iTunes. And finally, if you have anything else you'd like us to cover, send us an email at thesportsbp@yahoo.com or put it in the comment section down below, and we would love to cover it. But let us know what you guys think, why certain NFL teams are stuck in rebuild mode.